Welcome to Beyond the Huddle, the Central Arkansas FCA podcast where faith meets competition. I'm your host, Zach Rose. My co-host, Josh Adair. I always dog on him when he's not here, but he's not here. But we're super excited to have a very special guest with us today, someone who is a far better athlete than Josh ever could be. I'll just put that out there. But we're super excited to have Mr. Jeb Huckeba. He is a former Arkansas Razorback and played some time in the NFL as well, but even more well known for his impact with FCA in Northwest Arkansas. And so we're super excited to have him here. And Jeb, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, a little bit about where you serve, how long you've served there, and even some about your family, that'd be great.
Thank you, Zach. I am fired up to get to be a part of this huddle today. And anytime we can rag on Josh, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity.
That's right.
But just thank you again for this opportunity. I grew up in Searcy, so White County there in Central Arkansas. Moved there when I was 4 years old. My dad was pretty much a lifetime coach. He coached football. Ended up having 31 years at Harding University, the last 10 years as the head coach, and he retired from coaching in 2016.
Okay.
But I got to be on the sidelines with him, and really for me, I feel like that's part of the foundation of faith and sports together in my life. I got to be on the sidelines as a ball boy, and then I went to public schools for kindergarten and first grade, and then in second grade. Myself and my siblings, I have an older sister, Hope, a younger brother, Jordan. I'm right there in the middle. But we all made the move over to Harding Academy when I was in second grade, and just was able to have the foundation of faith there through chapel, Bible classes, godly teachers and coaches, and really just a little bit smaller type environment to where I got to play football in the fall, rolled right into basketball in the winter, golf and track in the spring, and really didn't know how good I had it growing up. One of my greatest memories of being around the Harding environment was in elementary school. When I would finish with my school day, I would walk across the track over to where Dad was. And if it was in the fall, he would be at practice. If it was in the spring, he'd be in the weight room, or they would also use some other facilities there to do off-season workouts that I got to go just hang out. And my mom and dad both worked for Harding University, and our life was pretty much around Harding. And in fact, we lived on campus in dorms where my mom was the dorm manager until I was 12 years old. And then when I was 12, we moved out to a neighborhood more out, closer at the time on the edge of town. It was really only 5 minutes from Harding, but I wouldn't trade that background for anything. And I saw faith at an early age through church attendance, through going to the Harding Academy, and really in my parents. I mean, Sunday mornings, my mom would turn on Christian a cappella music, and that was kind of the worship to get us in the frame of mind for church. However, I also was still pretty new and young and not really understanding what following Jesus was all about yet, but super thankful for kind of that biblical foundation and that training that my parents, my school, the people in the Harding community provided for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know something from my perspective that I can relate to you is private school was a big part of my growing up too. And having a deeper understanding of Jesus, who he is, what he did for your life, but also having continual teaching and even bigger than teaching, just an opportunity to learn from people who are actually living that out in their lives is so important. That's, I know, why we view the ministry of FCA as an incredibly important part of, especially in our public schools, of the opportunity to walk with them in relationship and to share with them of these kids don't have Bible classes every day.
That's right.
For us in private school, we get Bible classes. We get to learn about different things, and that's getting poured into each and every single student on a day-to-day basis. So I'm sure for you, that was very important for your growth and development early on to be able to see that, and then to be able to see an example from your parents, especially living in a coach's home. We talk a lot about on this podcast how coaching is a calling, and we believe that so strongly, especially in FCA, to be able to minister to someone specifically, but also to believe that the Lord has specifically ordained you and set you up in this position for a reason. There's a purpose for this. So I think that's so cool. And it makes so much sense why then as you continued throughout some of your life, which I want to dive into here, some of your playing days and your athletic journey of how that was, I'm sure, a foundational piece of your time as you went on throughout athletics. So could you maybe tell us a little bit more? Again, I'm sure you have been asked at different levels of what was it like playing for the Razorbacks, or what was it like playing in the NFL? But from a Christian athlete perspective, maybe a little bit different twist of this. How was your time throughout high school, throughout college, just living out your faith and being bold for Jesus in those years? And what do you feel like you learned in that time as an athlete?
Thank you. I just felt like, I remember somebody gave me a book one time, and it was about an audience of one. And I was reading about it, and it was like Jesus was in the bleachers. He was the only fan, and to perform and play to bring him glory. And that was pretty revolutionary for me to read. I think I was in 8th or 9th grade. And really, as I got older in high school and God gave me success after my junior year in football, you know, I'd had a great year, and I started getting attention from Division I colleges. I ended up running in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s, 40-yard dash. And so it was becoming apparent that this could go somewhere beyond the community I was in. Well, my dad, he gave me a couple principles and verses from the Bible. The first one was a parable of the talents. And he really challenged me that, Jeb, you know, we're called to maximize the gifts and the talents and abilities that God gives us. And so, hey, it's important that, you know, you become the best you're capable of becoming through training, through workouts, through attendance, and really maximizing your potential. On the other side of that, he gave me Matthew 16:26. What does it profit a person if they gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? And that helped me realize that even if God gave me very high level of success in football, it never would become the most important thing in my life. It would never take the place of God. And even with success, having the perspective of God is at the top. You know, you see coaches all the time. They might list priorities: faith, family, football. But how often is it actually in that order? And I would say that for me, there were times in my journey, whether it be high school, college, a little bit of professional, and even coaching, where I don't know that I daily lived out the order of priorities the way they needed to be with faith, family, and football. One memory that I had that I wanted to share about growing up as a coach's son was on Sundays after Harding University would play on Saturdays. If they won, the next day after church, we would go to a nice buffet restaurant with friends and hang out. Well, if they lost, we'd drive through Burger King. And it was like, hey, we got to get something to eat. Dad's got to get to the office. He's got to, grade film, break it down, get the scouting report ready for the next week. So that was just kind of funny that we look back and just like, well, if we lose, we're going to Burger King. If we win, we're going to go out to eat, at a nicer buffet. But many special memories. As far as how I lived out my faith in high school as a student athlete, I was very immature. I was not confident in sharing my faith. I remember being a part of what we called a spiritual encouragement committee in my school, the SEC. And we had T-shirts. I don't remember a lot of activities that we did, but I was associated with many Christian activities. But as far as like sharing the gospel, really having a vision for discipleship, that didn't come until, a lot later in my life. And really, when I was coaching is when that became more of a reality. In college, it was a leap of faith to come to the University of Arkansas for me, because up until my junior and senior year in high school, I had imagined I was going to be at Harding University. Well, when I came to the biggest state school in Arkansas, where it did have a reputation for being a party school, what was the weekend going to be like? Was I going to find any other Christian friends that I could relate to, especially athletes? There was an organization called AAO, Arkansas Athletes Outreach, that was started by Brad and Debbie Fress. And there were mentors for me through that organization, guys like Ryan Hale, Josh Folliart, Darren Phelan, Brad Fress. He mentored me my senior year at Arkansas. But AAO gave me an experience as a student athlete where I could connect with other student athletes that wanted to grow in their faith, that were looking for community. I got to go on 2 mission trips the summer between my junior and senior year to Honduras and see life outside of my culture. That was really eye-opening. Super thankful for that. I got to invite some of my teammates. This example will show you where I was at, even my senior year in college, with my faith as far as reaching out. The gentleman who mentored me, Brad Fress, he asked me to just invite my teammates to a Bible study at his house. He would lead it. I didn't have to lead it. And even inviting some non-believing teammates to his house, he was going to feed them, lead the Bible study, was definitely out of my comfort zone. So God has been patient with me. One of my favorite verses is Philippians 1:6. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ. So I would say a lot of my life, my faith has been a little like hesitant, maybe tentative, maybe even passive. But the great news about God is his grace is sufficient and his power is made perfect in weakness. And so through FCA, I was introduced to the way that you can share faith in public schools, and that really came into play in coaching. Before I get to the coaching journey, when I got drafted in 2005 by the Seahawks, that was an incredible dream that came true for my family and myself. My plan was to play for 10 years and then volunteer coach. And then when I got injured, I had to reevaluate my life and really trust God. But I want to jump back to a verse that I got from a coach in high school who was recruiting me, Coach Turner Gill. This was my junior year. He had come to Harding Academy. He'd come to a football practice. And after he saw me in person, they offered me. And so he wrote, I remember it was a beautiful card. On the front, it had their memorial stadium. I opened it up, and the card was filled up with blue cursive writing. And at the bottom, it said, Jeb, we want you to come to Nebraska, but more importantly, we want you to go where God leads you. And he wrote Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't depend on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And that verse gave me hope that no matter where, the University of Arkansas, Nebraska, Harding, that God would make my path straight if I trusted in him. And then fast forward, I'm sitting outside of a medical clinic in 2005, my rookie year at Seattle, and I'm waiting on the results of an MRI to eventually tell me my feet are fractured, and I had made the team, but I wouldn't be playing that year. So, the people that God allowed me to meet, the coaches that impacted my life, and then FCA really came into the picture in 2008 when I got my first coaching job at Rogers High School. And Coach Ronnie Peacock, who hired me, asked me to coordinate FCA for the team. So at this point, I want to just break and turn it back to you and just say, I probably got off script. Help us get back on script, or whatever you want to do. If you want to ask me more specific questions, because I'm kind of jumping around here.
No, you're good. That's perfect. That's exactly what we asked for on this show, is just an opportunity to share. I love how it comes so easy of rattling off scripture, and when we the Bible talks about hiding the word of God in our hearts, keeping it there for the opportune time to be able to share it, to encourage, to fight off attacks. I mean, the word of God is our sword to fight against the enemy. It's our attack piece, and to integrate each of those verses into a different and unique part of your story is so encouraging. And I'm sure for so many athletes, even hearing that, I do want to hit on some of that athletic journey, because I think that really heightens your ability and awareness to be able to minister to athletes and coaches today. And as we think about how athletics are set up today, I know for you, there wasn't all the NIL, and there wasn't all of these crazy transfer portal moves and this and that. The state of high level Division I football and college athletics as a whole was a different landscape when you played. And so for you, in a time, in a place where you're choosing a school and you have the opportunity to go play at a high level, to be able to look back on that time and think to yourself, man, for some people, this would be the highlight of their life. For me, I want to continue to invest and realize that the journey is not complete. Tim Tebow talks about, which I love listening to Tim Tebow speak, because again, it's a similar story of, he realizes that time in his life playing football could maybe even be the least significant time of his life, with the impact that the Lord still wants to do through him. I remember talking to you at FCA camp last year, and you told me, and it's something that stuck with me. You said, I want to give the best years of my life to this ministry, to FCA. And for that to be the heartbeat of what you do as a whole, and even just hearing your perspective of your athletic career, is so, so humbling to me to think about, man, because it's all about priority, right? We can talk about it. We can say this, we can say that. But at the end of the day, it's a call to action. It's a call to do, and it's a call to be like Jesus. It's a call to live for Jesus. And so I just wanted to tell you that that's so encouraging. I'm sure for anyone listening, that's an encouragement to them as well. But to go to your athletic time, especially at Arkansas, was, first of all, I'm just curious to know. I had to do some research before we got on this call here, but I just want to see some of your highlights. And boy, I would not have wanted to be one of the quarterbacks, running backs that got popped by you in the backfield. But was there a favorite moment, just from a pure playing standpoint? Was there a favorite moment, whether it was playing against a certain athlete, playing against a certain team, playing in a specific game, that you look back on and you think, man, that was really, really cool that I had the opportunity to play at that level and to play in that moment?
My freshman year, we played Boise State. I was not starting, but I got in the game. Their running back was number 36. Brock was his first name. I remember getting in the game, tracking him, filling up the hole, tackling him, and thinking that was the hardest feeling hit I've ever experienced in my life. This is a whole different level.
Yeah.
My sophomore year, by God's grace, I earned a starting position, and we were in Little Rock playing LSU for the SEC West Championship. I remember we had a dog blitz on where I was lined up as an inside linebacker, and I creeped down. And when the ball snapped, I came right off the defensive end's edge and ended up making a tackle and causing a fumble. And I remember sprinting over to the benches and just, that was 50 miles from where I grew up, and even seeing somebody I knew from Searcy there. And what a special experience to get to be a Razorback in your home state and get to actually contribute and make a difference in the game. We ended up, that was the miracle on Markham, Jones to Birmingham to Atlanta. We played in the SEC championship. Now we played Georgia. They beat us 30-3 in the Georgia Dome. That was not a fun game, but we did get a ring for winning the SEC West. So really happy and thankful we got to do that. My junior year, the highlight as far as games go, we went down to Austin, Texas. It was the second game of the year. They were ranked 4. We were unranked. We shocked them. It was an 11 a.m. kickoff. Our coaches treated that as kind of the most important game of the year. It meant more to us. We got to play University of Texas Longhorns, just the historical rivalry. Our team was ready. I don't think Texas was. Now, it didn't hurt that we had a quarterback who was 6'6", 230 and could outrun everybody up the sideline.
Yeah.
And one of my highlights of that game was I got to tip a pitch. They ran an option play. I was on the right side defensive end. They ran it to their left, and the quarterback was, just trying to figure out what I was doing. So I took an angle to attack him, and then I just reacted to the pitch, ended up getting to tip it, caused a fumble. So we got that turnover on about the 50-yard line and ended up winning the game 41-28. I remember the headline in the paper the next day was "Awesome in Austin," and just not only to those guys on that team, but to the Razorback Nation and community and alumni to go down there and beat them. That was so special. My senior year, the game was probably the University of Georgia. Unfortunately, from a team standpoint, we weren't able to pull it off. But from a playing standpoint, defensively, it was the best game of my career. David Pollock was on the other side, and he was one of the top defensive ends in the nation, and ended up making a play to seal the game for them. But it was a game for me that I felt like a kid. I felt like I was just playing on the playground. It was just coming really easy. And I felt like I was able to get in a zone and really help my team. And thankfully, I was able to have the health to do it. And the coaches believed in me. And those were just some of the biggest games in my life that I remember. And such a fun time to get to be a Razorback playing for Coach Houston Nutt, and to play with my teammates. And Code Red was our defensive theme. Be prepared, play hard, go max speed, and finish. And Josh Foleyart, I mentioned him earlier. He was a mentor of mine, brother in the faith. He helped me develop a talk on those principles: be prepared, play hard, max speed, and finish. And through the AAO ministry, I got to give a 5-minute Code Red talk before Emmitt Smith spoke at this church, where they brought him in as a keynote speaker. And I actually got to ride in a limousine with him after he spoke to the airport. That was pretty special too.
Yeah. Wow. I couldn't imagine I mean, the SEC is, you said it means more earlier, and that's, I mean, literally the SEC slogan. It just means more. But to be able to play at a high level, to be able to play against some high level players, because if I remember correctly, was Vince Young lined up on the opposing team for Texas when you guys played them?
So he was my senior year when they
Okay.
came to Fayetteville, and they
Yeah.
actually beat us. It was a close game. The quarterback my junior year was Chance Mock. He was their starter, and he wasn't quite as mobile as Vince Young. So
Well, there's not too many.
Yeah.
Not too many that are quite as mobile as Vince Young was.
Yeah.
But no, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that side of it too. As just a pure sports fan, those are the moments that obviously, yes, Christ is the most important. But as we've been looking through, there's a book called The Spiritual Game Plan. They talked about it at I can't think of the big yes, but I've been reading through that and viewing sports as an avenue that God created rather than something that hinders us from connecting with God. It's actually something that helps us be more creative in light of what God has made and how he's created us to be. And it talks about all different things of just glorifying God through the gifts and abilities that we've been given. You hit on that just a minute ago, but that's so cool to be able to use your gifts and abilities at such a high level. And I'm sure to elevate you into spots where you've been able to speak into the lives of certain players. I know when I have gone to schools now, I didn't go play in the SEC necessarily, but sometimes there's I remember one time there was a team that needed one extra guy to come play on the court with them, and I came out there. I'm not any kind of professional basketball player, but I was competent enough to make a few shots and pass the ball well, and it was against some junior hires, so I earned a little bit of street credit. But then was able to speak into their situation, and they listened and engaged at a different level because they understood that what they really enjoyed and what they thought was really important to them was something that I also viewed as important.
That's right.
But the priority of that was just a different level. And so I think that's so cool to be able to hear that in your perspective of having great moments, having these awesome opportunities. But that's the least of what the Lord has done through your life in terms of I'm sure just the impact and things you've been able to make to lead people closer to Jesus. So I do want to hit on, like you were saying, your coaching career and kind of that transition into FCA. We also believe in FCA that we are called to this ministry and that this is something that the Lord puts in places on our heart and in our life. And sports ministry is a specific niche, but I think it hits on such a wide range of people. I mean, we talk about the Billy Graham quote of a coach will impact more people in a year than the average person will in a lifetime. So take me through some of that journey for you as a coach transitioning into FCA staff, what that transition looked like for you and for your family at that time, and why you have continued to stay faithful to the ministry of FCA and serve in that capacity over a span of, what is it, almost 20 years now?
Being on staff?
Yes.
Actually, I'm approaching 7. So,
okay.
But my coaching career prior to coming on staff was also a calling and a ministry, and just getting started in coaching. I remember filling out a form and going through just some requirements, and one of the questions is like, "What's your purpose in coaching?" And my purpose was to use the platform of coaching to share Christ with others. Now, in public schools, obviously you got to always think through how you do that. But FCA gives us an opportunity, a platform, which is what drew me in and gave me the chance to use that coaching platform to reach football players for Christ. And for what I was asked to do was really get guest speakers out in the community who had also had great sports experiences. They would come in, some would share the gospel, others would just share a motivational message. The players often would come because they got free pizza, but that was a little bit of what my role looked like when I was coaching and serving as the FCA coordinator. But as you said, Zach, like I wanted to be the best coach I could be. I wanted to give my players the advantage to utilize what I had learned at all different levels to help them be effective and to be successful. And so you're building those relationships, you're building credibility, you're building trust. I still have a signed football from the players who played for me at Rogers High School for 2 years. And then eventually, when I went to Fayetteville High School, the head coach there asked me to do that as well. And in Fayetteville in the spring, we were able to have like a smaller group, more of a discipleship type huddle. And it was after a weight room, and off season would end. And we didn't have huge numbers, but in that we got to really talk through more of like, what's it like to live as a Christian? What's it like to share your faith? And then FCA ministered to me through coaches' Bible studies. That was one of the highlights for me, is a guy named Bill Burnett, who was the first staff member in the entire ministry of FCA in 1972. He had come back to his staff role after having a career in professional counseling. And so he would show up at our school. We'd meet. We studied different books that FCA produced. And it wasn't a large group of coaches. It might be 2, it could be 5. But one of my highlights was when we did a joint coaches Bible study at the University of Arkansas football facilities, and 2 or 3 up to 4 of their coaches would be there. The Fayetteville Public Schools coaches, like Fayetteville High School, Ramey Junior High, Woodland Junior High, we'd show up. They had fresh bagels from Panera Bread, great coffee, and then Bill would facilitate the study. And the book we studied was The Greatest Coach Ever, about John Wooden, and there are 50 principles that we went over. But I'm still in touch with some of those coaches through that connection. And Zach, my goal in coaching was to coach long enough to retire from the profession, and then I could volunteer with FCA. And in fact, my transition to becoming an FCA staff member was unexpected, and it was difficult because it came on the heels of a really challenging season as a coach when I had become a head coach at a junior high, and I was an assistant athletic director. And the second season that I had there was just very tough for several reasons. And I was looking for something that felt like a better fit. It felt like life-giving. But for me, that job wasn't going to be one that I could sustain long-term. So through the counsel of the high school head coach and talking with the administration, I knew that job wasn't going to continue for me the next year. And so I got to have 1 year where I was just teaching. I was teaching elementary PE, and an area rep position with FCA had opened up. And I'll just tell you, prior to that time, when I thought about working for FCA, my thought was, that's great. I'll do that when I retire, because I don't really want to raise funds.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, God provided 3 people in my life. One was one of my neighbors, and then 2 men from my church who had lived on support, and they saw raising support as biblical. They saw it as a blessing, and they encouraged me. And my wife, she was raised in a faith background that was just, very structured, and they didn't really talk about the gospel a lot. So she went to an FCA camp in high school, and she heard the gospel and raised her hand, said, I want to follow Jesus. And so she had some great experience with FCA too. And she and I were aligned, and she felt like the Lord was calling us to step out and get started in raising funds. And because she had a peace about it and had a good experience, and FCA had impacted her life, I felt like, hey, the time is right. The time is now. I want to use the best years of my life well, if the Lord gives me 70 or 80, like the Bible says, that's great. If, I got to stay ready at all times, because we never know how long of a life we're going to have. But I guess my point is, I didn't want to wait until I had my real career and then just volunteer. I wanted to be able to give my very best to the Lord through faith and sports together. And with the background that He allowed me to have in the experiences, I just felt like I couldn't say no. I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity. So that's how I got into the ministry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. Even so that your wife was a part of the impact of that early on too. I'm sure that, like you said, brings a peace about stepping into something like that. And the Lord it's just unfathomable how He works in the midst of everything that we have going on. We think that we have control of certain situations, and we can't even think about one step ahead, let alone 10 steps ahead, 20 steps ahead, the rest of our life. And so that's just so I love hearing the story of every one of our FCA staff because there is a story behind why they're there. There is a story behind how the Lord has led them to those opportunities. With the last 10 to 15 minutes that we have here, I do want to hit on just the specific ministry that you're getting to do right now, some of the opportunities that you've had, impact that you've seen. Would you maybe be able to give just for anyone who's curious, what areas do you specifically serve over? What does that look like for you as a director? And you're a multi-area director or?
Yes.
Okay. So multi-area director, maybe share the area, larger area, counties, however you share that.
Yes.
Share some vision about what you guys do, staff, and just tell us a little bit more about what you get to do with FCA.
Thank you, Zach. I'm very blessed to serve under our state director, Micah May, and just really, really appreciate his support. My role is a multi-area director over Northwest Arkansas. That includes North Arkansas, which is directed by Neil Elliott. He lives in Mountain Home, and he serves anywhere from Mountain Home to Harrison, over to Alpena, a lot of the schools in those areas, in actually 6 counties worth. And then also the University of Arkansas FCA is under the umbrella of Northwest Arkansas FCA. So I get to work with Cortez McCraney, the area director there, and his staff. And you talk about a platform, the Razorback athletes, and it's been so encouraging to see what God's doing there on campus at the U of A. There's other colleges too, like John Brown University. There's NWAC, and then there's some smaller colleges along the way. There's a college in Mountain Home, one in Harrison. And then there's a college close to where I live called Ecclesia College. And I just got to do a Bible study for a couple of baseball coaches today. But primarily, Zach, my job is not on the field ministry. It's working maybe more behind the scenes with our staff. And my goal and my focus is to make sure our staff are able to run in the ministry lanes God's called them to, encourage them in their funding, their relationship with Jesus. I mean, really, we know that we can't do anything on our own without abiding in Christ, John 15:5. And so I just really have a heart to prioritize the spiritual health of our team, and so that we can live out the 4 values of FCA: integrity, serving, teamwork, and excellence. And that doesn't just happen. That's a challenge. As you mentioned, we're in a battle. Every day we face spiritual battles. We have a real enemy, and it's important that we put that armor on daily through the word, through prayer, through taking time to stay in sync and in alignment with the Lord. And that's not, I meet with a gentleman, and he gave me this analogy. If you're on a football field and you get the ball and you're running, most of the time, you're not just going to run free to the goal line. You're going to get hit. You're going to get tackled. And so if our goal is to get to that end zone, and lead people to Christ, have discipleship, be unified as a team, there are forces against that. And so I just see my role as helping our staff stay locked in on the schools that they serve. As far as areas, Washington County is where Fayetteville is, Springdale. Benton County is Bentonville, Rogers. There's a lot of growth in this area, a lot of schools to choose from and serve. Most of the ministry we do is campus ministry, junior highs, high schools, some middle schools. The U of A ministry is strictly on campus at the University of Arkansas. The North Arkansas area is primarily junior highs and high schools, campus ministry. We are excited about the opportunity to partner with local churches through FCA Sports. Give credit to a guy in North Central Arkansas, Mike McCain. He has a FCA Sports Flag Football League. There's some incredible things happening around the state of Arkansas and ministry, and even in our region under Todd Baumgardner, our regional vice president, in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and then, of course, Arkansas. I want to give a lot of credit to my wife, Jamie. Her title is admin assistant, but she and I work closely together. She does do some field ministry through local high schools and junior highs. But I don't know that I could do this without her, with her prayer support, her wisdom, her encouragement. One of my teammates, really our teammates in Arkansas, Cortez McCraney, he was asked, what's the most important thing in ministry? And the answer was staying encouraged. And so if we as FCA staff, if we can stay encouraged, if we can stay focused on what God's called us to through, having the courage to make new connections, serving our Huddle sponsors, student athletes, serving well, planning for events, being in touch with volunteers, helping them really understand what it means to serve with FCA. I encourage, and this is something that is kind of just a work in progress for me and really for all staff, but having a discipleship and an evangelism plan is so important to be able to live that out, and taking opportunities to listen to the Lord throughout the day. What is the Holy Spirit telling us? And believe me, I don't have this figured out. I want to grow in my understanding, my ability to listen to God's voice, to follow Him, to stay in God's Word. But I pray and I hope that for all of our staff, they can look back and say, man, my time with FCA really helped me grow in my faith. Whether that's 25 years, 40 years, 2 years, whatever that might be. I just want to appreciate Micah May and his leadership, just especially helping staff understand what it takes to raise support. I mean, just to offer a call every week for people to get on and to have accountability, to be encouraged, to learn new strategies. I know that's one of the main reasons why people won't go into ministry or won't stay in ministry is fundraising. But also like people like you, Zach, who are doing things that allow others to get connected virtually. And I think getting our staff to be able to share their stories and getting the word out is so powerful and valuable. Not only for our other staff to hear, but even as an encouragement to people who aren't on staff, our volunteers, our Huddle student athlete. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and I think it's very valuable. And I appreciate the preparation that goes into it, and the consistency that you're showing as trying to do this as often as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. That was something that uh, when we think about reaching every coach and every athlete, larger than I think what I've learned since being on FCA staff is FCA um, is known as a lot of different things to different people based on their experience, but
Yes.
it had widely been known as just a football ministry,
Yeah.
depending on where you go, what state you're in. But I've learned, especially here in Central Arkansas, that was a wider view of what
Yeah.
FCA did and does. And for me, that was like, okay, but when we think about this, and not to diminish football, but also to elevate some of the other sports
Yeah.
that are played too, and it has nothing to do with the sport. It has everything to do with the human being and the child of God that is uniquely made and given abilities to perform at a different level than someone else. Of how do we view everyone as equally valuable, and
Yeah.
how do we find elements and things to be able to share the stories of the people that are being impacted in our community. And that's been something I've so enjoyed. I love having conversations with people, and I have learned that I've seen a lot of different interviews, and I'll be honest, sometimes I get a little frustrated watching sideline reporters ask interviews, because I am like, man, can we dig a little deeper and ask a question that maybe just brings a little bit more of an answer from someone? And if you can do some of the research. And I think what I've learned from this podcast avenue is, and what I'm trying to get at here is, when we think about pursuing others and loving others and caring for them well, a part of that is getting to know them and understanding who they are. Number one, being able to encourage them, and two, be able to listen and hear what they have to say. Because when we do that, then there becomes an opportunity for us to then process and understand, okay, they said this, so that means that their train of thought means that they believe this about themselves, about
Yeah.
the world around them. And then that's where we step in. And like you said, I think it's important that we view it as a evangelizing and discipleship of two different things, two different elements of what we do, each an important step in the process. But without discipleship and without the opportunity to push people to be more like Christ, not to just push them to be more like the beliefs and thoughts that we have, but really to be like Jesus, we have an opportunity to make an impact greater than ourselves in that. So I love just being able to hear the overview of the ministry that you get to do there, and to encourage people, like you're saying, with the last 5 or so minutes that we have here. I wanted to ask you, is there a specific story of ministry in the surrounding areas that you serve over? Maybe it was another staff member who shared something with you, or maybe it was something you experienced yourself. Was there a story of impact that you could maybe share to encourage us as we finish this up?
About 3 years ago, there was a baseball coach that reached out to me. I had known him a little bit, but he wanted to do a FCA baseball youth clinic to help develop his high school program. And so he got that started, and then we got connected, and I asked if he wanted to do a Bible study. So himself and a couple other coaches would show up pretty consistently, and we used the E3 Bible. We went through different studies. That was impactful. Well, then one of my teammates, Becky Patterson, who's been on staff with us for 25 years, she introduced me to this gentleman who had just retired from being a CEO of a very successful company in Fayetteville. Well, I met him, found out about him, had a great athletic background. He was a wide receiver for the Arkansas Razorbacks in the late 70s. He also played basketball for the Hogs for a few of those years. And he had been plugged into a local church for a while. And really, he was just looking for somewhere to serve. So I told the coaches, after maybe this was going into year 2 of the Bible study, hey, there's a volunteer. I'd like to come. I think you'll enjoy meeting him. He's a former athlete. Well, what God has done through that is really cool, because I was able to pass the baton to him. He's really poured into these coaches. He invited them to he and his wife's home. He had meals with him. He gave them Christmas gifts. He prays for them. And there's been multiple times where he's called me, written me a letter of how impactful this FCA volunteer opportunity has been in his life. And I've just been blown away at what God can do through a volunteer. And it was when I initially, when I was handing that off to him, it was kind of like, well, is everything going to be okay? Is it going to continue to go? Well, I think the Lord's really multiplied it, and it's gotten it's gone much better and more effective as far as reaching the coaches and kind of the expansion of the outreach from what I could do with it. So praise God for just how someone with an athletic background who had a desire to serve, who I was introduced to by a trusted teammate, could multiply the ministry. And I just remember a really impactful person in the ministry a few years ago saying, hey, we've got to hand off the keys to the FCA vehicle to our volunteers. And whether it's a part-time staff, full-time volunteer, a sponsor at a school, just the chance to connect faith and sports together to see the kingdom advance is incredible. It's life-changing. It's life-giving. It has eternal value. And so I'm super thankful that I got to see that and be encouraged by, the stories there.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't be possible without volunteer support, churches, businesses, those who give and those who serve and those who pray. So,
Amen.
Man, thank you so much, Jeb, for your time. We are just so grateful to hear some of what the Lord has done in through your life and then through your ministry as you're serving faithfully with FCA. So thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you for listening and for joining this episode of Beyond the Huddle, the Central Arkansas FCA podcast where faith meets competition. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Zach.